If you're a little heavier or a little lighter, typically what you'll require is a spring change. So we'll kind of go through that process real quick on how to do that. First step of this process is we want to remove our rear or lower shock bolt. So this will use our 5mm Allen. Go ahead, we'll loosen this guy up. Once we pull the shock bolt out, the rear shock will be free to move down. So this is a point where you can either grab a towel, lay it on the top of the down tube, protect it, or just be very cognizant of what you're doing. I'm going to let it fall down and hold itself there. And from there, we're going to remove the 2 upper shock bolts. First thing we want to do is we want to set our spacers off to the side. Take our 2mm Allen. We're going to remove our rebound knob. We're going to take our flathead screwdriver for our locking collar. We're going to come find these little plastic white set screws. Just going to give these guys one turn out. Again, one turn out. And that will release the plastic set screws from the threads, which will enable us to loosen the preload collar. So from there, we will go ahead and loosen the preload collar. From that point, push the spring up. We'll also push the lower spring plate up as well. And then this will reveal our circlet. We're going to use our flathead screwdriver. And lined up with the relief, we're going to gently insert our flathead here, taking care. Obviously we don't want to scratch our shock, so we just want to gently pry it up and push it away. Once we get it to this point, all it's going to take is just a little bit of thumb pressure, and then it's going to pop that circlip off like so. Take our shock spring plate off, and then lastly, our shock spring off. So we'll go ahead and install the shock. Everything's going to be 100% in reverse. Slide the spring up until it rests on the preload collar. I'm going to take our spring plate, slide that over the bottom of the shock until it contacts the spring. Since we removed it with the end of the circlip lined up to the relief, we'll go ahead and start this there too. So kind of a little trick is to use your index finger, press it down into the valley of where the circlip goes, and then use your other index finger to roll it around the base. So we're going to slide our lower spring plate down, stand the shock up. This is simplified things. Let that spring rest down. I'm going to drop our preload collar back down onto the spring. Typically what we want to do is start with 1.5 turns. So we can go ahead, 1 turn in, tighten that. Again, very low torque. All it needs to be is just touching those threads, and that'll be enough to hold it in position. So you'll notice the bottom of the rebound knob is keyed, much like a flathead. So that keyed portion will only go in the way it will work. So you'll notice you can kind of set it in there, give it a kind of a slight rotation, and it will drop and lock into place. From there, we'll drop that bolt in. Again, it's a 2mm Allen. And then just gently start that thread, get it going. It's about 1 Newton-meter torque to get that snugged into place. We're going to slide these hardware spacers in place. Again, they tend to come off on their own, so let's just hold those in place with our fingers as we go for install. With a firm grip on the shock, let's go ahead and line the shock up with the upper hardware first. Line everything up, get those threads started by hand. We just want to get them snug. We don't want to torque them at this point. So snug, crack them off just a little bit. So the simplest way to do this is just bring the shock up into the opening for the rear link. Push up the rear triangle to help line the bolt hole up for the top link with the bolt hole on the shock. We can just take our bolt, line things up and slide it through and start that thread. Once we get that bolt tight, we can go ahead and torque this, as well as proceedingly torquing the upper shock bolts. Well, once we get done, we'll want to go ahead and torque the upper shock bolt, as you see inscribed here, to 16 Newton meters. And then we'll move down to the lower or rear shock bolt, and this is also 16 Newton meters. Hope you enjoyed it, and look for other videos as well as the Tazer MX Expert. We'll do a special video for that bike as well. Go have some fun.